Hi YouTubers, my name is Kevin and you're watching The Royal We. In this message I want to talk with you about the unhealthy attraction that you might be struggling with towards toxic narcissistic people or a person. This attraction keeps you drawn into the situation mentally, emotionally, or even physically. Even though you may not want to be involved with them anymore, even though you're trying to go no contact and break away from the relationship, yet there's this irresistible attraction to the toxicity. What is this attraction exactly? Why do you have this unhealthy attraction to the toxic, abusive situation? Well, in this message, I want to share with you at least two false narrative groups that I believe have conditioned us throughout the years to fall into the trap of being attracted to highly dysfunctional, toxic relationships. Now, by the end of this message, I hope to give you some principles and tools that will help you detach completely from the attraction to unhealthy, toxic relationships so that you can move on in your life and be the best version of yourself. If this sounds good to you, hit the like button right now, and I will continue. Now, there are two different, what I believe, false narrative groups, and I call them groups because there's different things within the groups, but they all work together, and you're going to see how this is. The first group that I want to share with you is what I like to call moral obligation. The moral obligation false narrative. And let's talk about the group of moral obligation that keeps us stuck in attraction to toxic relationships. To begin with, in the moral obligation group would be to love everyone. This is the first idea in the principle within the moral obligation. We have been raised to believe this concept of love, and I'm not going to get too far into the principle of love. I've talked about it in other videos, but the reality is love is a very misunderstood word. It can mean really anything. It shape shifts all over the place. As a matter of fact, if I were to ask any of you right now to identify what love means, I would get a myriad of different answers from you. As a matter of fact, I challenge you. Go ahead and pop down in the description box right now. What do you personally think love is? How do you identify what love is? It's a good challenge, and I'm anxious to see all your responses. But the reality is that it means something different to everybody. Even abusive people use the word love. So the problem is when we come to this understanding of being conditioned to love everybody, without even really knowing what the word means, we fall into the trap of literally trying to be friends and intimate with people who are our enemies, with people who hate us. Why? Because we're trying to be loving. And without a healthy understanding of what type of love we can have, we're trying to hang out with them, we're trying to watch movies with them, we're trying to go to their parties, we're trying to talk with them, we're trying to help them, we're trying to fix them, all out of loving them because we don't have a healthy understanding of love and because we feel morally obligated to be loving, which we really don't even understand what that is. Okay? Now, the second false narrative and understanding within the group of moral obligation is not being judgmental. How many of you have heard not to be judgmental in this life? When you see somebody who's abusive and aggressive and hostile, don't judge them. Don't you be judgmental. You never walked in their shoes, for crying out loud. How dare you? Until you walk in their shoes, who are you to call them out for being abusive, for cussing at people, for starting fights, for beating people up? Who are you to judge them? Right? Once again, that's the moral obligation that we have. Be quiet, zip it, don't be judgmental, don't say anything. Right? How many of you are aware that you are absolutely called to be judgmental in this life? You have to be. Because you have to protect yourself and your family. And the only way you can do this is by making solid, sound judgments every single day of your life, using discernment and wisdom as your guide. You have to be a judge of every person and place and thing you surround yourself with and how close you allow them into your life. But yet the moral obligation has conditioned us, don't be judgmental, which has caused us to be, once again, attracted and drawing us inward towards toxic situations when we should be pushing ourselves away from toxic people and situations. Not drawing ourselves in and becoming more intimate because we don't want to be too judgmental. You follow me? Now, the last one in this category of moral obligation, which keeps us trapped and attracted to narcissistic and toxic situations. The last one is don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. Who are you to talk about your hurts and your concerns when it comes to abusive people? That's selfish of you. Don't you think of them? They're the ones that are angry and abusive. They've really got it bad. Don't be selfish. Listen, it is never selfish to stand up for yourself. It's never selfish to call abuse abuse. It is never selfish to leave a toxic situation. That is never selfish. And if it is selfish, then by all means, you better believe we are selfish. Because once again, nobody's going to take care of you as well as you are going to take care of yourself. And you've got to be able to get out of these abusive situations. You have to be selfish. If it means cutting yourself off of family members, if it means cutting yourself away from intimate partners, you've got to be selfish if it comes down to protecting your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Be selfish, be judgmental, and for crying out loud, stop trying to love everybody when we don't even know the proper way to love in the situation. So that covers the moral obligation category of false narratives. And again, these false narratives, I believe, have put us in a trap of staying stuck in toxic situations because we feel morally obligated to these things. Now, the next set is opposite of moral obligation, but it can work together with it. The next set is seduction and enticement. This is seduction and enticement that we've been conditioned and groomed to fall into when it comes to toxic situations. The first part of the false narrative of seduction and enticement is that the glorification of bad people doing bad things, the glorification of rioting and of fighting, the glorification of being a badass and being macho, the glorification of being the toughest, the baddest, the strongest. That's been glorified in culture. And so that glorification causes us to fall into the trap of going, ooh, that's amazing. Right? Forget the fact that they're abusive. Forget the fact that there's wickedness and it's evil. It's glorified. Having the most money in the world. Having all the girls, or having all this in this lifestyle. The glorification of wickedness. Right? And the next one after glorification in the seduction false narrative is that of idolizing individuals now who are living these certain types of lifestyles, idolizing the wicked, idolizing them in these positions. Ooh, we want to, how cool would it be to be like that? Putting them on a pedestal because of their wicked lifestyle. We've idolized that, and it's in our face constantly through TVs, through movies, right? Even our youth. They're finding idols in these movies, these superhero movies with superhumans who are destroying things and people. They're idolizing these monstrosities. And then after the idolization comes the attraction, the physical attraction. How many of you have seen movies like Interview with the Vampire? Or how about the Twilight Saga series? Listen, these series and these movies and these concepts are built around the principle that you're dealing with vampires, blood-sucking monsters, but never mind that they're blood-sucking monsters. That's the reality of who they are. Just look at how hot they are. Ooh, they're sexy. That's who you want to be with. You want the blood-sucking vampires because they're hot and charming. They're so smooth. Forget the fact that they want to eat you. And they're monsters. You don't think these do things in our lives to condition us, especially over time? It warps our perspective. It causes us to break down our boundaries of what's healthy and what's right. And instead, we're gravitating towards these things where we're glorifying wickedness, we're idolizing wicked things, and we're finding ourselves physically drawn and attracted to monsters. You follow me? The worst one that I could probably mention to you is something that our kids fall victim to. That is stories such as Beauty and the Beast by Disney. What's the idea and the concept of this story? That this girl falls in love with a monster of a person. But forget about it because her love is great enough and strong enough to change that monster of a person back into his original state of being a perfect Prince Charming. What message is this sending out to our young children? Go find the monsters and tame them. You can do that. Your love can do that. Wrong. If there's anything that we have discovered in this world is that when you're dealing with monsters, you're dealing with a monster. What you see is what you get. How many of you have fallen into the trap of trying to love a monster in your life? Whether it's a woman that's a monster or a man, they're just monsters of people. But wait, I'm breaking the rules right there of the first set of false narratives, right? Don't judge. You haven't walked in their shoes, right? And don't be selfish. No. They're monsters. They don't care about you. They're only in for what they can get for themselves. It's time that we start to realize these false narratives and cut the ties. And listen, both these two things can work together. And this really creates confusion. You start to get sucked in and drawn into toxic relationships because of the moral obligations and because of the seduction. So now you find yourself playing lover and counselor in the relationship. And that never works out. Listen, you cannot be someone's lover and counselor. It's not going to work out for you. At least choose one or the other. If you want to help toxic, narcissistically abusive people, then learn the right kind of love to help them. But don't try to be intimate with them and help them. That'll never work. Likewise, know yourself well enough to know what kind of person and mate you need in your life as a helpmate, because that is what intimate relationships are about. Gravitate towards that to find your helpmate, your lover, your marriage. But keep them separate, right? Listen, I want to be a part of your healing journey. Visit www.jointheroyalwe.com. There you can schedule your one-on-one time with me. We can do telephone consultations. We can do FaceTime. For those of you who are iPhone, Apple users, we can also do text message consultations. Also join me every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock a.m. for Royal We Fellowship. This is 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. Royal We Fellowship is a biblical study, unlike any other Bible study you've been a part of, where we're looking at the ancient text of the Bible from the perspective of being in a toxic, narcissistic world. And also every Monday night is Royal We Live Chat. Royal We Live Chat is an opportunity for the community to come together, ask questions, answer questions, and even call in live, so long as you know that you are live. And with that, we'll be back with more videos right here on the Royal We.